Hi everybody, this video is being released on Friday the 17th of April. That means it is officially the end of lockdown 1.0. The first 21 days are finished and we are into lockdown 2.0, which is at least another 2 weeks. Recent developments have suggested that the lockdown will be incrementally released bit by bit, so that'll be interesting to see what that looks like, and as we kind of get closer to that, we will address it a bit more and we'll speak about it a bit more in these videos. So naturally, after 3 weeks, the novelty of the experience has probably worn off a little, whether it's working from home or studying from home, and everything else that comes along with that. It might have been a very enjoyable experience. You might be finding certain things starting to be quite wearisome or difficult. Or you might, again, find the trend going the other way, and what was quite hard at the beginning is becoming easier and you're really settling into your routine. As always, it's really helpful just to check in and see what's working and what's not working and then readjust as necessary. So in today's lockdown segment, we'll be discussing the importance of nutrition and then exercise on your emotional well-being. So an important disclaimer is I, of course, am not an expert in either. But I've combined some of my own thoughts and experience and clinical experience with a lot of the latest literature on the topic as well. And there's a lot of really interesting information out there. And as such, I've divided it into 2 sessions. So this first video will just be on specifically on nutrition, and then we will speak a little bit more about exercise in the next video. Important to clarify, of course, having never been on a diet in my life, when we're talking about eating healthily, it's not talking about dieting. So it's just about recognizing that what we put into our bodies matters, and then being conscious about this process. So nutrition is all part of a bigger picture of wellness, and these different components can either reinforce each other or they can undermine each other. And if you're scheduling your time wisely and you're living meaningfully and you're eating healthily and you're exercising well, you're more likely to feel accomplished and better about yourself and experience satisfaction with your choices. And conversely, of course, if you don't, you're more likely to experience dissatisfaction and feelings of negativity towards yourself and towards your choices. And then this compounds, and this makes it harder to arrest that movement and that momentum. So that's just a quick overview of nutrition and the importance of it. And of course, there's so much good information online in terms of what best practice is there. What I was just hoping to do is speak a little bit about the relationships between what we eat, our mood, our thinking, our general wellness, because I think that's often overlooked. So my name's James Sturdy. I'm with the Regent Business School Counseling Services, and this is the part of the lockdown video series. Look out for our next one coming on Monday on exercise and the importance of exercise and mental health. Have a great weekend. So there's a subsection of psychology which is relatively new called nutrition psychology. And this explores the relationship between ourselves and what we eat, so people and food. Naturally, eating disorders have been the focus of investigations into psychopathology for as long as psychology has been around and psychiatry. But nutrition psychology takes a slightly different perspective in that it's interested in how our cognitive processes are influenced by the food we eat, and then conversely, how the food we eat influences the way we think and feel and our general well-being. And of course, there's a lot of research and literature that has come out of this area of psychology. So the connections between the workings of our digestive system and our brains have long been suspected and described in popular culture, literature, fiction. And we can see that in sayings such as, I feel it in my gut. You know, we can kind of think about these intuitions as visceral experiences and emotions that we kind of feel are stored in our gut. And science, specifically neuroscience, has reinforced this of late with the revelation that the digestive tract has the second highest concentration of neurons anywhere else in the body, apart from, of course, the central nervous system, which is our brains. And they have established that there's a separate central nervous, or a separate nervous system that is operating within the digestive system itself. And on that vein, some treatments of depression now include probiotics. This is something that's being looked into quite a lot. This hasn't been very well established. There's cause for more research here because all of the studies that have shown it are quite small. But there's some linkage that is being shown there, especially when it comes to treating disorders such as irritable bowel syndrome, which has been linked to depression. There's a comorbidity there as well. So, interestingly, did you know that 95% of the serotonin in your body is produced in your gastrointestinal tract? I didn't know that myself until doing a bit of research for this. Serotonin, of course, is the neurotransmitter that is responsible for mediating our mood. It's responsible for our happiness levels as well. Depression is typically linked with low levels of serotonin. So that's quite an interesting connection in itself. And if we think about depression, of course, and the causes of depression, they're complicated, and it's more than just one factor. And definitely it's not just about what's happening inside of our gut. But research has shown that traditional diets, high in vegetables, high in seafood, low in refined foods and sugars and processed foods, can lower the risk of depression by up to a third. So they've seen 30-35% lower risk of depression in people who have these type of diets. So what we eat is worth taking seriously. Ultimately, our thoughts and our feelings, our general mood resides in our brain. And this means, although our brains are running all the time, even when we're sleeping, they need adequate fuel to perform adequately. So substandard fuel is going to affect the output of our brains. It's going to undermine our ability to concentrate and possibly even decrease our moods, lower our moods. So low quality food, we can think of anything that's excessively processed or refined or has high quantities of sugar. Mood and food have been shown to have correlations for quite a while. And this becomes a negative feedback loop, of course, because when we're feeling low, we tend to comfort eat, and this can further lower our mood. And it can also reinforce feelings of self-hatred or self-disgust or dissatisfaction. The challenge with diet, of course, is that we're not immediately confronted with the consequences of bad choices in this regard. So we sometimes have to wait weeks, months, years, even decades before we start to see the effects on our health and on our wellness of poor diet. So this is a problematic scenario because we are more tuned as humans to reacting to immediate threats and immediate dangers, and long-term or longer-term ones are less pressing, which means we don't mobilize our resources to deal with them and to change our behavior as required. This produces a situation where instant gratification and no immediate adverse effects contribute to self-destructive behavioral patterns. So it takes discipline, it takes responsibility, it takes a very keen awareness of our relationship with our future self to eat well. And of course, it's habituated. So a diet of sugar, fat, and salt, this is the holy trinity of addictive foods due to the scarcity in paleo environments and conditions. A diet with these three, sugar, salt, and fat, in childhood is incredibly difficult to kick once you reach adulthood. Those tastes are acquired and very hard to outgrow. In fact, the relapse rates of sugar addiction are higher than those for cocaine. It's a sobering thought. So the challenge is real, of course, and we have to take it seriously. You have to be able to pay attention to what you're eating. So there's ways of doing this. A food journal, for example, is a good way of being reflective about this. And then once you have a bit of an idea of what you are putting into your body, you can try a clean diet for a while. So a couple of weeks, for example, you take all of the unnecessary foods out of your diet and try something that's a little bit more balanced and traditional. And the key here, of course, is setting yourself up for success by minimizing the accessibility of temptations. It's impossible to keep up your willpower at all times, especially when you're in situations of learned behavior. So you have moments where you're more vulnerable to temptation. And if you make sure that these foods are not in your house, you're obviously going to feel less tempted at times. So you're making the life of your future self easier by not buying them in the first place. One of the ways of doing this as well is never shopping without a list or shopping impulsively, but always having a shopping list and sticking to it. So in terms of food, fish can be a really good option. especially oily fish, as it has omega-3, has been shown to be really good for brain function. Important when you're thinking about these things to set realistic goals. So the idea is not to be puritanical about these things and have it absolutely perfect necessarily. You need to live a little. You need to find joy in these experiences, and eating, of course, is a very joyful experience. It's a sensory experience, sensory journey, and it's also deeply connected to social and cultural traditions and connecting with people. So we have to be mindful of that as well.